Okay, we're back for strategy 10 of TABE Reading M. This lesson is going to be on interpreting information, specifically visual information, things like charts, graphs, maps, diagrams, timelines, things of that nature. When you're taking the TABE test or GED test, you're going to encounter some visual elements, some information, evidence, data that is put into visual form, and we need to get used to thinking of those things as very important, critical parts of the text that we're reading. They're not there just to add extra interest or to show you something cool. They're there to support the information that's in the passage. And if you see one on a test, assume that you're going to be asked questions about it. It's not just there for the fun of it. We are starting on page 57 of the book, so make sure you have your paper copy or have open to scan here on Canvas. And this one's called Interpreting Information. I'm not going to read these 9 different types of visual information off right here because we're going to be going through the important ones, the ones that you'll see in this chart. Kind of a cool thing that we have an example of a chart in the lesson on charts. Okay, so we'll see maps fairly often on the test, and certainly an image of a region or an area. It may include the land features themselves, or it could have maps of cities, the routes of roads that they take across the land. But also maps can show things that aren't apparent by just looking at the land. Like there can be maps of temperature differences, maps of population density, how many people live in a certain area. So maps are there not just to show the shape of land and the cities and so forth there, but they're also there to show important concepts that relate to typically social studies. Okay, and so our next type of visual element is the graph or chart, and we see several different types of these. The bar graph that has either horizontal or vertical straight lines to show usually numerical information. Line graphs, certainly, that show up and down movement trends upwards and downwards over time. Pie charts appear quite often, have things broken down visually into percentages. Everything in a pie chart should add up to 100% no matter what. A lot of the questions that you have about pie charts on the test will actually have you draw connections between 2 pie charts. That may be on a related topic, but different aspects or at different periods of time or so forth. So being able to read a pie chart and know how to draw connections between 2 is a necessary skill on the test. Okay, diagrams, illustrations, photographs. Diagrams often show you some sort of process that, they may have 3D images, 2D images, pictures, a lot of times arrows to show you, the direction of a certain thing. In science, we see diagrams quite often to illustrate, maybe some piece of technology or the way something works in the natural world. So diagrams are there quite often. Illustrations, photographs, they speak for themselves, but particularly on the social studies test, you're going to have some political cartoons to take a look at. So, get in your mind that a political cartoon, just like anything else that we look at, has a message, a main idea, and you're going to need to interpret it based on what's there visually. Okay, timelines, again, sort of self-explanatory, but they show a chronology to connect back to our text structures lesson. See them a lot in social studies and history. The timeline of a particular event that happened over a period of time, like the Revolutionary War or Civil War. These last 2 I don't think you're going to see on the test often or at all, but animations, videos, probably not. Definitely not interactive media other than the test itself. But just note that, out in the world that these type of visual information can communicate ideas, main ideas, evidence, just as easily as text or any of the other types can too. Just because there's movement and pictures and sound doesn't make it non-scientific. Sometimes good evidence can be contained in media form. Okay, at this point, you're about to pause the video and start on the work, but just to kind of preview what you'll be doing, you're going to encounter a lot of different types of charts and diagrams. So we have a line graph that kicks us off here. Actually, I want to talk a little bit before you get started about the type of graphs that we're going to take a look at. I'm sorry there's a lot of stops and starts in this video. We have somebody rolling a really loud trash can down the hall, so it kind of keeps interrupting my flow. So if this video doesn't have any flow, then you know why. But so the first thing we have here is a line graph, and it shows some trends. Okay, it happened again. Some trends in use of public transportation over time from the year 1991 all the way up to 2015. All right, so as you read the passage, you'll understand why we have that particular chart here, or I'm sorry, graph. We've got a bar graph that shows us the top 5 metro areas. That's an urban area that's attached to a big city. By percentage of workers who rely on public transportation to commute to work. So we've got an example of a bar graph there. We have a diagram that has within it some other types of things. We've got a pie chart in there, some diagrams within it. So you're going to encounter quite a few different types of visuals, more bar graphs. Do your best when we come back and work through the answers. We'll start talking about some approaches that you use and how to pick up all of the detail in a chart, graph, or image to make sure that you're understanding it correctly. All right, so pause the video and do the work, and then resume when you're ready to go over it. Okay, so here we are, started back with our passage and the accompanying visuals, the graphs. So number 1 asks, what information is included in the bar graph, and how does it relate to the passage? And I think I kind of already hinted at it just a minute ago, but we see the top 5 metro areas. And, if we look at the names of these, it's New York, Newark, Jersey City. So these are, cities that have kind of merged together. The New York City area is really big, and it has grown to the point where it's started to kind of overcome some of these other places like Newark and Jersey City. So we consider it a metro area, not just a big city. And then we've got some other examples here too. San Francisco, Oakland, 2 cities that are so close together that they're considered to be the same metro area. And so, we have the top 5 listed by the percentage of workers that use or rely on public transportation to commute. And note that by far, double even in second place is the New York area. If you've seen movies set in New York, you know that a lot of people use the subway to get to work. That it's just too crowded for everybody to be driving to work in the big city. So, kind of think about the real world as you look at these graphs and, connect some things that to the information that you're visually seeing. It's dramatic that the amount of people relying on public transportation in the New York area is twice as much as anywhere else. But when you think about the geography of New York City and the millions of people who live there, it kind of makes sense. Okay, let us move to questions 2 through 5. Okay, what 3 visual elements are used in the passage? And it's talking about the passage as a whole in this question. So we have a line graph here, a bar graph here. And here we have a diagram, but as I've said, it has some other things in there. There's certainly a pie chart. We have a diagram and just, a numeral expressed in large font here. So this is kind of like a key facts diagram. I might even call it like a sidebar of information, but it has some other visual elements within it. Okay, 3, what is the relationship between the passage and the diagram regarding owning a car? And we're talking about here the 2.8 million people who live in rural households without a car. And so we should probably define rural. Rural is actually any place that is countryside or a city of less than 50,000 people. So, I'm stationed here in El Dorado, where our population is about 19,000. Even though it's a town, or even maybe consider a small, very small city, it's still considered a rural area. So, a significant amount of people, almost 3 million people, live in places like ours or in the country and don't have access to a car. So what this diagram is showing is that public transportation is needed. It's just as important in rural areas as it is in urban areas. There may not be, the high numbers of people using public transportation as in cities because there's not as many people within the population. But to the people who use public transportation in rural areas, it is important. It's crucial. Okay, number 4, based on information in the pie chart, how many rural Americans depend on public transit? And this one is pretty explicitly said, 40% of Americans, of rural Americans, are dependent on public transportation. And I'm not going to do, well, I can probably do the math in my head. So it's going to be 40% of 2.8 million, so a little over 1 million. 5, based on the information in the graphic, how many federally funded transportation systems are in rural areas? And this one we have to do no calculation at all. The number is just given to us there in 1,764. Moving on to the new passage on manufacturing in America. Scroll through the various images that we have here. We've got another bar graph, pie chart, line graph, another bar graph, but this one's organized, arranged in a little bit different way than what we've seen. All right, let's go to the question, starting with number 6. According to Figure 1, how many manufacturing jobs were available in January 2017? All right, if we go up to 117 and find where the line intersects, we're between 12,000 and 12,500, a little bit closer to 12,500, which is why the answer is C. We're rounding it up to 12,500. It's a little closer to that than 12,000, so that's why we make that determination. Number 7, the information in Figure 2 supports which statement from the article? And it's D. It's impossible to argue that manufacturing in the U.S. is going away. And if we go up to Figure 2, we see over the course of 2013 to 2017, and that's about when this book was published, that there has not been a drop-off, a going away of manufacturing. A little bit of a dip in 2015. But it certainly started to increase a little bit more in 2016 and the first couple of quarters of 2017, and even bigger growth. So it is impossible to argue that manufacturing is going away if it is in fact increasing. So that's why the answer to 7 is D. Number 8, based on information in Figure 3, which area of manufacturing offers the best chance of employment to future job seekers? And we're going to go with production, because it's 51% of the entire workforce, more than all the other categories put together. So if you're looking for the just sheer amount of jobs, then production at 51% of the workforce by far is the largest number. Okay, and number 9, according to Figure 4, that's this bar graph, what is the 4th largest area of U.S. manufacturing employment? It's D, machinery. You have to go up here and, may need to put on an extra pair of eyeglasses or a magnifying glass or something to see it, but machinery is the 4th largest here. And finally, number 10, which visualization best supports the claim that U.S. manufacturing has changed a great deal in the past 25 years? A little bit of a tough question, required some critical thinking. The answer actually is 1, because it shows the dramatic decline in manufacturing that happened. Hang on a second. All right, you guys, I had to check that answer in the back of the book. It seemed very, very much incorrect to me. It is a Figure 1. I tell you what's throwing me off, though, is it talks about a 25-year period, and the graph only gives us a 10-year period. But what the book tells us is that it shows a change over an extended period of time. That 10 years, I'm not sure that's a great question. I don't like the fact that we're asked about 25 years and then we're on the correct answer only has a 10-year period. That's the answer that they gave us. I think a better question would be over a 10-year period. But that's certainly my opinion. But that does finish off the lesson. If you had some problems with question 10, I think that probably explains why. But we'll see you back here for the next lesson, and we're getting super close to the end of this book.